what do you think about anime? And as soon as they said that, I thought of this story. I immediately thought of this story. They had a number of other stories, and I was like, nope, this one. I hope I'm right. But it was that marriage of form and the story, and that felt right.
Yeah. I think that was my initial value that I came with, was that I had an ear for it. To be honest with you, it's mimicry. It's not authentic. Yeah. I think if you fall in love and you read it enough, and you have, I have a great love of poetry, and so I think one of the very first things I wrote was it is never late. So that sort of rhythm, I think, was just because I came to the book so young, well, relatively young. I think if you grow up with it, it becomes a little bit more natural, I think. I do think there's a facility that you have to have with it. Yes. And then hearing the actor in your head is helpful. McKellen is really helpful to hear. He has a cadence to the way he speaks, and so I can hear how he's going to say something. So that helps as well. Yeah. And having worked with actors a lot, you know what was great? They couldn't mess with the lines. You can't ad-lib in Tolkien. It's really hard. So which was great, because often actors have a tendency to want to do that and switch things around. The ending of the lines became a really interesting thing that we came to is understanding there were a lot of temptations for a lot of the actors to have a feminine ending at the end of a line and weaken the end of the line, and that's not the rhythm of how he writes. Yes, right. We would do it ourselves. So that was an interesting process. There was a lot of bad writing that went on. Very bad. So, what you got? Because you'd hear it. Fran and I would go, I would say, no, it's good. And she'd say, well, say it. And then I would try and say it, and then I would hear it. Yes, different. All right, okay, it's all right. And then there's weird little moments where you're struggling to find the right word. But, I imagine that's what Professor Tolkien did himself. Absolutely. And then there's also moments where we changed things. We didn't do it unknowingly. We changed them deliberately from what Professor Tolkien wrote. For that reason, for the sound, for the scanning of the line. So
it's very much like composing music and to have that sense of rhythm.
Yeah. I would say we tried to excavate it based on what, Tolkien absolutely did not write uncomplicated characters. He wrote incredibly intensely complicated characters, I believe. Look at Denethor, look at Wormtongue, look at, obviously, Smeagol and Gollum, but look at the conflicts that, Gandalf is not a simple character. He is flawed. He goes through fire. He comes through that. He is human, but not human. Well, he's not human at all. But he lives within this world and has maybe become too much part of this world. There's so many layers in every single one of those characters. You can see, I do understand why some people would see it from that perspective, but I look, yes, certain characters, Samwise Gamgee, but the beauty of that unshakable nature has a very complex strength underneath it. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, you might think it's one note, but it comes from somewhere.
So, it's worth bearing in mind that he wasn't against a film made of it.
No, he wasn't, until you read his notes on the script.
But absolutely pedant.
No.
It would have been a nightmare. He wouldn't have want any word changed.
I don't know. I think he would, I don't know. I would have loved to have the conversation. I remember Ian McKellen coming, I'd see Ian every now and then, he'd walk up to me and he'd have the book in his hand.
And I'd be like, oh my God, he's been getting into the prose again. And it was you shall not pass. And he was like, no, actually, you shall not pass. And I said, no, I know. And you cannot pass. Is it? You cannot pass. And I said, I know, but say it. And he said, why don't you change it? And I said, say it. And he went away and he was thinking about it, you cannot pass, which he could do.
Yeah.
But you shall not. He understood. He just proclaimed. He had summoned. He cast a spell on that bridge. He was drawing on and pulling up. I am the wielder of the sacred fire.
Yeah.
You cannot pass. You shall not pass. And the shall was that whole kind of. It was a sense. There's a sense of time contained in shall. Which, anyway, it was that whole thing, and it was one of those moments where, and I said, I don't think Peter would, if you want it to be, you cannot pass, you should do that. But he really did. He really did understand. That was one of those moments where we changed it, and where I would have gone to Professor Tolkien and said. The spoken word, it's different. There's a difference. And somehow there's a cadence to it. And I don't know that he would have, if he would have come back maybe, but probably with a very good reason. But yeah, anyway.
So in the new film, am I right in thinking that Eowyn tops and tells it? So it's almost like an oral tale being sort of transmitted, which is the Rohirrim culture. Is there a framing device in it? Yeah. I'm getting nods.
Yes.
I wonder if that was, a way of going to the fact that this is how they passed on their stories and stuff like that.
100%. It was exactly that. Yeah. It was also, there was, to be honest, it's incredibly helpful because anime is not ever going to show a certain level of emotion. People were really struck by how emotional the voiceover is. We didn't just make Eowyn, so imagine her telling the story to her son, maybe she's now in Gondor. When you're working with an actor, it really helps them if they know why they're saying it, where they're saying it, where they're located. And so I said to Miranda, I think you are homesick. And I think this story that you are telling to your children is to tell them where they come from, which is therefore connecting to where you come from, and which it's almost like reminding herself. And as soon as she got that, she just was like, okay. She went away and thought about it, and then she really did. So yeah. So it gives it a depth and immediacy, I think, that's in there of the actual person telling the story. Yeah,
exactly. So, well, it is the Rohirrim culture, but also
Yes.
starts as mythology by people telling tales to other people.
We very much at the beginning. Part of the conflict we have is with, and it is that thread of Dunlending versus Rohirrim of is Rohan Gondor's lapdog, which is what kind of Freka comes with. The other thing we did, which may be incorrect, and you guys would know, we couldn't actually find it, is Freka has called for a witan, and we say, Hera assumes, she says, but only the king can call for that, and Olwen is the one who says that is the custom, not the law. And that what Brian loved about that, Brian Cox, was that he governs by consent. He's an old socialist. He governs by consent, and that meant he has nothing to do with Aragorn, with this whole great higher tradition of Gondor. The Rohirrim govern by consent, and therefore the line of his sons is not assured, which
felt authentic to Anglo-Saxon. Yes, I do. So, good, we got that one right. Yeah. And then, so starting there gives you this really great tense scene, you know, at the beginning. You know, you've got this whole kind of push-pull. A challenge is made to his authority. So that was great. I think that felt right and felt like it was in there. It was very much. I think we've got all the lines that exist in the book into the movie. What's the Prophet Stark line? Yeah. Yes, will be brought to his knees. Yeah. There's some great. There were only a few, but they were all really good. Everything is hand drawn, but because of the time frames that we were dealing with, they did actually do a lot of motion capture. So some stuff was motion captured, and then the artists would come in after the fact. Some of it was just original, based on the sequences that Kamiyama was coming up with. But we started with concept art, Alan Lee and John Howe, of course, especially for environments. But can I tell you, for character, Kamiyama was very much driving that, because one of the things you need to do in anime is to be able to really distinguish the characters. So Freka, as Tolkien points out to us, is you know, he made him very big, but each character needed to almost have a silhouette that from a distance in the film you will be able to know who you are looking at. So that was driven by the Japanese, a particularly brilliant one actually, called Stato. You can follow him on Instagram, Stato. He's a Japanese concept artist, and he did the most beautiful character renditions for these characters. Believe it or not, Philippa and I actually demanded that Harry's boobs got smaller. That's still quite big. That was a convention of anime, and I've since found out from female anime fans that is actually something they embrace. In fact, the female form and the way it's depicted in anime. The horses were a huge problem. When I had my first call with Kamiyama, I was so excited and enthused, and I said, and we can have like thousands of horses charging across the thing, and they all went silent, and they went, how many horses? Because each horse has to be hand-drawn. Each movement of each horse has to be hand-drawn. And so this is a beautiful labour of love. I think you can see in the Snow Troll, there's an element of Japanese anime in there, because we had to do a monster versus monster fight, because that is something that is very thematic to anime, especially in a fantasy anime.